What's going on, Pro Lacrosse fans? Welcome to the second episode of the revived Fantasy Lacrosse Podcast, part of the Pro Lacrosse Talk Podcast Network. I'm your host, Parker Blake, at Parker Blake 60 on Twitter. And with me tonight is Matt Brignati, at Matt Brignati on Twitter. Make sure you go give him a follow. But let's just get right into it. I'm just going to run down the top players from week 2 of the PLL's Player Royale. But let's go attack. Top attack was Chris Gray with 30 points. And then midi was Tom Schreiber, 21 points. CJ Costabile had a big week with 28.6 points. And then Sean Scanoni, 25 points. At goalie, Trevor Baptiste rounded it out with 34 points because that man cannot be stopped. Matt, what did you see last week?
Yeah, well, you said it. Trevor Baptiste just looks amazing. He had a really good game against Dieter Erlin the first week, and the second week against Stephen Kelly, he just had a day. And you can really see that the box influence in his game has really just helped his confidence grow, and he's such a threat in transition now to score goals and get assists. So he might have to be a regular in my lineup. But one other thing I want to mention, I just mentioned TD. You know, he didn't have a good game week 1, so he was in the tier 3 in week 2. It looked like a steal, and then I ended up falling for that TD trap. And I think he just didn't have the best matchup against Connor Farrell, who's a really big dude. And he just didn't have the best day. So I fell for that trap personally. And then I also wanted to mention from week 2, Zach Courier. He had -6 points, but that's because the Water Dogs starting Fogo Jake Withers got hurt. So then Courier was taking all the faceoffs. Obviously, he's not a faceoff guy. So he didn't have the best percentage, and that really cost him in fantasy. But yeah, those were my 3 players that really just their scores really caught my eye this week.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. You don't really see that in any other fantasy scope, I don't think, where you can have a player who's usually a pretty productive guy just based on injuries and having to switch positions just tank for a week. And it was honestly frustrating, but I mean, it was super interesting to watch. So, I mean, that's something. I just wanted to run through. I'm trying to just make it sure. So there was a face-off and a goalie in the top 10, and then Nardella really wanted to get in there, but he was 0.4 points short. But I'm starting to think that just this face-off and goalie position is where you have to get your points from. And like you said, I mean, we talked about how Teet's got to be an automatic play, and I think Trevor Baptiste is officially the second guy to play it. So, I mean, your tier 1 should be locked up every week, and if they're not, then let us know what you know. And then I just had a second TD just letting us down again. And I'm still convinced he's going to have a big week, but instead of trying to just pick it when no one else can, I'm just going to ride with Baptiste until he does.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same thing. I think he's such a positional advantage, because if someone else takes a different faceoff guy in that spot, Trevor can easily have 20 plus, 30 plus more points than them. And it's such an advantage just to have him. And he's such a threat, scoring points, scoring goals. So I think, yeah, he has to be a regular in your lineup.
Well, I mean, he's averaging per week. I mean, I know it's only been 2 weeks, but he's averaging 18 more points a week than the second faceoff in the league. And after it's a 4-point drop off to number 3, and then another 4 points to number 4. And then you're working with almost 0 negative points. I mean, Baptiste has to be the play face off, and if he's not, then I don't know what you got going on, but apparently you know something. And then just moving into week 3, who are your players to watch this week, Matt?
A week 3 player to watch for me, he is a tier 2 this week, Michael Earhart, the LSM from the Whip Snakes. I think the Whip Snakes this week, they're playing a tough Atlas team who likes to push transition. They have a super strong offense, and Trevor Baptiste, he's gonna get the Atlas possessions. They're gonna get their chances, and they're a super high scoring offense. They have so many players who can score. So the Whip Snakes are gonna have to keep up with them. And I think that to counter that really high powered Atlas offense, the Whip Snakes are gonna have to push it in transition and get a ton of transition goals. So obviously Michael Earhart, he's a transition threat. a threat from two. And I think that if the Whip Snakes, they want to win this game and match the Atlas offense, they're going to have to push transition. And I think that's going to be an emphasis. And Michael Earhart is going to be, he should be right in the middle of that game plan, getting just 2-point chances. And yeah, I could definitely see him getting a two bomb. Normally, I like to play it safe here. I played a Graham Hossack last week who got right at his projection, and I played it safe. But I think Michael Earhart is going to get a two bomb here. I'd put money on it. He'll definitely have his opportunities. So yeah, Michael Earhart is my week 2 player to watch as a tier 2 defenseman. You know, defensemen are hard because you're kind of gambling. Are they going to get that two bomb? Are they a transition threat? But yeah, I really like Michael Earhart this week.
Yeah, no, we talked last week about how just that 2-point goal is just that 10 points is major, and that can really just swing your entire lineup for a week. And we were even talking just before today, like just about how that defensive position is so hard to pick. Like, are you just going to pick the guy that's productive? He's going to get ground balls. He's going to get a couple cost turnovers, or do you get the guy that you think has that 2-ball potential? And I think that's the part I'm still struggling with. And I mean, it's a long season, so we got time to figure it out. But I really do. I think I want to start leaning towards being more aggressive and going for kind of those 2-point attempts. It's just more now. Do I go two ball guy at D and then just a transition guy at midi, or do I go for 2-ball threats? That's the big question. And then yeah, and like I said earlier, Baptiste is my player to watch every week until he proves to me that he is not that guy. But averaging 30.3 points a week is just insane, and I'm going to ride that train all day long. I will say Atlas-wise, I mean, just overall in the league, I mean, they're leading the entire league. The top 3 players, minus Nick Morocco, who's tied for number 3, just on a weekly basis, you got Baptiste at number 1, Jeff Teat at number 2, Chris Gray at number 3. The Atlas is loading the top of the league point-wise in Player Royale, and my only concern with that moving forward is that they do have that family style, so you can't really guarantee who's going to get those points. They might calm down one guy one week. They might focus on one guy one week. So, I mean, like I said, Teat's got to be an automatic play, but I'm starting to even eye maybe Gray if he starts getting more involved and kind of seeing where the ball starts to move around to. And then my biggest question mark this week that I was having Matt sell me on pre-recording was Courier. I'm wearing my Courier jersey right now, and I was struggling with him because he had such a bad week last week purely because he was doing those face-offs. But he's a high production player. He was one of the top guys last year if we would have had this in place last year. And I think I got to roll with Courier. And then just my final little got to get it in there, but just goalie wise, we talked about last week how it's about volume, right? And to get saves, you got to get shots. And I think this Atlas Whipsnakes game, if you want a lower tier goalie that's not Blaze, that's not Scanone or Morocco, then Burnlore and Kincannon are going to have a lot of potential to get some points this week, especially with all the shots that are going to be coming in. I mean, I was leaning on that over just for the game, but I mean, either of them as a lower value play or lower tier play is a great move in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I really think that game is going to be high scoring. That's why I love Michael Earhart to get his 2 bomb or at least get over his projection. And I love him as a tier 2. And I think that game is going to be a really high scoring game. And also the Zach Courier play as a tier 3. He was midfielder of the year last year. As a tier 3, he's a do-it-all midi. I think he's a great play this week.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to pull it up real quick, but he was, let's see. Yeah, Zach Courier was the number 2 midfielder last year, just behind Miles Jones on points per week. If we would have had the same scoring system in place, he was getting 17.3 points per game. So I mean, I can't sleep on 17 points. Let's just move right along. Matt, who you got in your lineup this week?
I'm gonna start with my tier 3. At midfield, I have Zach Courier, obviously tier 3. You just talked about him. He's a do-it-all midi. He only had a bad week last week, and he's only tier 3 because he's taking face-offs. He's not going to do it this week, and he's a do-it-all midi. He could do it all. And yeah, I have him at my tier 3 at my midfield spot. My tier 2 guys, one at defense. I just talked about him, Michael Earhart. I think he's going to get a 2 this week. I'd put money on it, and I think that the Whip Snakes, they're going to want to push transition against this really high-powered Atlas team. So I like Michael Earhart this week as a tier 2. And my other tier 2 is Blaze Reardon in net. It's crazy that he's still a tier 2. He's a top 2 goalie in this league, last year's MVP. There's also a Redwoods offense that's struggling. They might force shots. And, he's gonna eat those shots up that you don't place really, really well. And he was last year's MVP. He's a great pick. And my tier 1 guys, you got Jeff Teat at attack. You got to ride the hot hand. He's been hot. That Atlas offense just looks incredible. And he's been put up absolute numbers. So you got to have Jeff Teat in your lineup. He's going to be a regular in my lineup for the rest of the season probably, unless he proves me otherwise. And then at face-off, my other tier 1, Trevor Baptiste. Obviously, he's averaging over 30 a game. That is absolutely insane. And I don't think you're going to get I think the production between Trevor Baptiste and then Fogo's 2 through 9 or 2 through 8, they're just not there. And he's miles above everyone else in terms of fantasy production. So I think you got to start Trevor Baptiste in your lineup every week as well. So, yeah, that's my lineup. And, Parker, let's hear your lineup.
I agree 100%. I mean, Trevor's that guy. I think we all know he's going to be that guy. I mean, he's played against some of the best faceoffs that we're going to have in the league. And it's not happening.
Yeah.
I'm right with you. I was struggling with this. And like I said, you sold me on Zach Courier for the week. And it's just the same thing we said about TD last week, which unfortunately didn't pay off. Hopefully we can hit this one. But I think he's being a tier 3 purely because of one bad week is kind of where the value is going to be in these earlier in the season games, is having one guy have a bad week that just helps you get him in your lineup as well. So Zach Courier is going to be my tier 3 at midfield. My tier 2s, I got to go Blaze. Blaze is like my favorite player in the entire league. I bet all my money on Blaze going under the total, and I'm going to bet all my money on Blaze in my lineup. So last week I went with some Redwoods to bounce back, and that didn't happen. So now I'm going to go all in on Blaze Riordan this week, and hopefully he can contribute something. My other tier 2 is Ben Randall from the Water Dogs. I think he's really slept on. Actually, in my personal ratings, whatever you want to call it, he's still a tier 1 guy for me, but you can get him a tier 2 value through Player Royale. So, I mean, that's an automatic play for me. And then I think, like we both said, and I think we're going to say the rest of the season until something happens, but Jeff Teat and Trevor Baptiste are my tier 1 guys. And I did play around with a little bit with not playing Teat, but I just think, especially against this Whip Snakes team, that I just honestly has not impressed me yet this year. I think he's going to have a big game. And like I said earlier, I'm just more concerned on maybe do people start just sliding to him more? Do people start, I don't know. Do they stop the Teatster? Do they stop the Teatster at any point this year? And then if they do, then that's when Chris Gray is going to pop into my lineup. So just to run it back through, my tier 3 is Zach Courier. Tier 2s are Ben Randall and Blaze. And then my tier 1s are Jeff Teat and Trevor Baptiste.
Yeah, I mentioned it on the Pro Lacrosse Talk Podcast. I know it's super early. It's only 2 games in, but we haven't seen a face-off man this dominant. Like Trevor Baptiste has been that dominant since the Greg Gorelian MVP season in the MLL. He was just absolutely out of this world. And Trevor Baptiste, I know it's super early, but if he can keep this up, he's got to be up there for league MVP. He's just insane. But I do also love your Ben Randall pick. He is so slept on. That is so true. He's so slept on. He's one of the best polls in this league, and not enough people know his name. So yeah, I totally agree, and I really like your lineup. I know we have really similar lineups, but that's what's going to happen when you see like a value like Zach Courier at tier 3. That's just what's going to happen. So
I will throw it out there. I had three D men that were their tier 1s based on my rankings, but they're tier 2s based on Player Royale. And that was Ben Randall, Michael Earhart, and then Michael Rexroad is the number 3 that neither of us had in our lineups, but he's the same value. I think they're all pretty even across the board about which matchup you like best. But yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting week, and it's going to be interesting to see how similar everyone's lineups get as the season goes. Like you said, we're pretty similar, but it's just going to be about who can find that one guy that's going to make a difference. And like you said, I mean, Trevor Baptiste scoring a goal every week is going to be ridiculous if you can keep it up.
Yeah, I think as the season goes on, we're not going to see those T. Erlins or those Zach Couriers at tier 3 because it'll be a little more evened out. So I think that's when you'll see a little bit more diversity within the lineups. And obviously, after 2 weeks, they're not going to have the average that they're going to have at the end of the season if they have one bad game after 2 weeks. So yeah, I think as the season goes on, I think the lineups will be a little more diverse.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see when everything evens out, and then it's gonna be really hard to set lineups when we get to that point.
Yeah, true.
And it's gonna be interesting to see kind of who gets to the top and who stays at the top, and who are those guys that are kind of bouncing back between tiers that you can try and get on a lower value week. But yeah, no, it's super exciting. I'm glad they picked the longest season that they've done so far, weeks wise, to do this Player Royale. I missed my DFS with the NFL, and here we are. We'll get it with PLL almost.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a little bit glitchy so far, but I think that this just started. So if you're listening, and I know we're both like a little bit frustrated with how the fantasy lacrosse has been working, but it's all going to even out. They just started it, and they're going to work through the kinks, and it's definitely going to improve as the weeks go on. So I would just say to anyone who's a little bit frustrated, just be patient, and yeah, it'll be worth it in the end when it'll be working seamlessly. So I also just
for sure. I think it's a great point. I mean, it's been really, they have issues, and then getting kind of the updates early in the week, and it's hard to set. I'm fantasy sports wise, I love setting my lineups earlier in the week and then being able to tweak it throughout the week. And it's kind of hard where I have to wait till usually end of day Wednesday where I'm at, or even Thursday morning before I can even get a solid lineup in.
Yeah.
And then just one last thing I wanted to mention. We finally got up on the Pro Lacrosse Talk website, prolacrossetalk.com. We finally have just a database where you can go and see how players are doing, who the top players in the league are, since there isn't really anything available through the PLL yet. So if you just go to Pro Lacrosse Talk, under the betting tab, there's going to be a fantasy lacrosse page. And if you go there, you have the full, all of the players that have played so far in the league, the points they've gotten per week. And then you also have the scoring rules on the far right. But just go there, maybe help you make some lineup decisions based on how players are doing. Maybe you can make your own ratings based on those numbers. And then, as always, make sure you go and follow us on Fantasy Lacrosse at Fantasy Lacrosse on Twitter. And do not forget to check in with us next week when we tell you the winning lineup once again.